Hello and welcome to NewsClick's show Mapping Fault Lines, where we discuss major geopolitical issues around the world. Today, we are going to be talking about the Mediterranean region and North Africa, where a lot of developments have been taking place in the recent weeks. There was, of course, the hope of peace in Libya after a ceasefire was announced, although now that hope seems to be receding. There's been tension, there's a UAE-Israel deal as well. And recently, news has come that the EU is threatening Turkey with sanctions over disputes with Greece and Cyprus. So to talk more about this, we have with us Prabir Prakash sir. Prabir, thank you so much for joining us. We have discussed this issue before, but the Mediterranean region and the gas reserves seem to be emerging as one of the hotspots with almost all the geopolitics around the region revolving around it right now. So could you take us through actually who are the major players and what's happening right now?
It's an interesting issue because when you talk about mapping fault lines, really West Asia, North Africa has multiple fault lines. And what is becoming clear now that some of these multiple fault lines are becoming more visible. The obvious fault line has been the United States against Iran. Of course, Israel is a part of that. And then we had slowly Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates joining the anti-Iran bandwagon or even their own contradiction. So that's been something which has been there with the larger contradiction between the Arab people and, of course, Israel, the settler colonial power in that part of the world, and the United States backing them completely. Now, this has been the visible fault line, but there is another fault line which is now coming out, and there is even a fourth fault line which is emerging. The other fault line, which the United Arab Emirates, Israel link up seem to also underline, is that the monarchies, and this is United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, these are all the monarchies that are still there. Something should have been irrelevant by the 20th century, let alone 21st century, that these monarchies see not only Iran as a threat, because that's also Islam, political Islam, but does not give room for monarchy. In fact, they overthrew Shah of Iran. So that is also something which, for instance, they see in Muslim Brotherhood, that Muslim Brotherhood, while being various other things, has also shown that you can coexist with Islam and yet be anti-monarchy. Now, this didn't come about in a day. Initially, Saudi Arabia backed Muslim Brotherhood. Ikhwan was supported by Saudi money for a long time, as well as by the United States, against what was seen to be nationalist Arab states like Nasser, as well as, for instance, what we saw in Iraq and Syria. These were nationalist Arab states, and they were seen as danger by both the United States as well as the monarchies. Hafiz Assad was as dangerous to them as Nasser was. This was the way they perceived it. So therefore, that was the other underlying fault line, which has also come open with Egypt, that you have Islamic Brotherhood on one side, the monarchies on the other, and Egypt as a military regime has aligned with the monarchies on the issue of Muslim Brotherhood, but the Syria has not aligned with them. So you have a lot of crisscrossing, if you will, on these terms. But Muslim Brotherhood is seen to be a threat by the monarchies because they thought they could use Islam in order to buttress Saudi Arabia's power over the region, saying that I am the protector of the holy places, therefore I represent Islam. So that has been challenged. And here Turkey becomes important because let's not forget that essentially Erdogan represents Ikhwan. They represent Islamic Muslim Brotherhood, and they therefore really belong to that current which contests in Islam, and in this case Sunni Islam, against the monarchies. So I think that there is this underlying monarchy versus political Islam threat which is also there, and that the monarchies now think is a bigger threat, and they're therefore willing to give up the Palestinian people by aligning with Israel, because they feel that the United States does not have that kind of intervention possibility. This fault line that has emerged now is clearly because of the weakening of the United States as a local guarantor of everything to the monarchies. And they are now looking at their own survival. What are the local alignments they create so that they can survive both political Islam and whatever Republican forces that might be there. Republican not in the American sense, but in the anti-monarchy sense. So this kind of nationalist Republican sentiment, popular sentiment, which also the Palestinian people's struggles really represents, now comes up against a monarchy, and the monarchy also sees Islamic Brotherhood as a threat. So I think these are the currents which are there. And Turkey versus Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates is a fault line that is there within the region between political Islam and a monarchy, so, trying to also take control over the region using the monarchical privilege of controlling the holy places, which is what Saudi Arabia is. The political guiding spirit of this is supposed to be MBZ, the Prince of United Arab Emirates, the Crown Prince. He is supposed to be the mastermind all of this. But let's not get into who as an individual or is not driving it. It's really monarchy versus political Islam also appearing now as a fault line. And that explains why Qatar on one side with Turkey is being opposed by United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And Egypt is aligned with them. And this is what you talked about in Libya. These are the fault lines. Of course, there are various European powers, Russia on one side, others on the other side. All of that is there. But the local battle is really Turkey versus United Arab Emirates versus Saudi Arabia, and Qatar being with Turkey. This is the local alignment that is there, and Egypt being supported by Saudi Arabia as well as United Arab Emirates, and not being supported by Qatar at all. So this is the battle over Libya. And when you talk about the Mediterranean region, that's the other axis of the crisis, of this particular realignment, fault line, whichever way you want to put it, is over the gas in the region. And that puts Greece, France, as well as Israel on one side, along with Cyprus. In fact, they are using Cyprus location, and therefore Israel to Cyprus, that part of the Mediterranean, whatever gas is there, they think they can control it. And they have also planned for a pipeline which will go undersea pipeline, which will carry that gas to Europe. And of course, Turkey then sees that they are being frozen out of this completely. And they have, at least as an ally, the Turkish part of Cyprus, which is, of course, Cyprus has been, as you know, bifurcated for quite some time. And that section has aligned with Turkey and with Libya, GNA government, which is recognized officially as the representative, which all countries of the UN have recognized. Ground situation on the is maybe different. Haftar seems still to hold some military edge over GNA, though with Turkey coming in, that has shifted somewhat. Then you have this Libya and Turkey coming to an agreement which says, look, our economic 200 kilometers zone means that no pipeline can pass over this without our support. So therefore, they have essentially stymied the pipeline project. And now what you said, therefore the France's threat, the European Union's threat that they will put sanctions on Turkey. And I don't know where this will grow, because Greece is a part of European Union, Greece is a part of NATO. The strongest NATO power apart from the United States is actually Turkey. So it's not going to be that simple either. Can the NATO act against Turkey? Well, that is a question that was asked earlier as well. Can Greece fight Turkey alone? No question they can't. Will France entered the fray on behalf of Greece and the pipeline? Question to be seen. And I don't think there is an easy answer to this question. So I think what it has brought up is a complete realignment of forces in the region. And this is not Iran versus Sunni Islam. It has, this is what people outside wanted to portray Shia versus Sunni struggle. It's never been a Shia versus Sunni struggle. It has been oligarchies of different kinds in West Asia. Iran being a political Islam state which believes in political Islam. Yes, we have differences of all kinds with such a state, but nevertheless, it's certainly a more representative state than Saudi Arabia is. So, or the different monarchies are, or the military dictatorship that Egypt has again become. So I think this is the mix of things that are in the play at the moment. But clearly, this is something which is increasingly going to fracture on multiple lines. It is not going to be a monolithic Arab versus Israel that we have already seen has fallen apart. It is not going to be Sunnis versus Shias that has already fallen apart. And it will also not be NATO on one side against others, because even NATO, Turkey and Greece are on opposite sides. So I think we have a situation which is very fluid at the moment, and it is multiple players in the fray. And it's very difficult to predict at the moment which way the current political kaleidoscope will settle after the shake-up of the United Arab Emirates recognition of Israel.
So in this context, it's actually interesting to see Turkey's trajectory itself, because we have already seen Turkey's role in Syria, where it is in some ways, say, defied the United States and European powers. Turkey had a brief, relationship with Russia regarding military purchase. And now we see that Turkey, which is also a contender for entering the European Union, is again in a space of conflict with the European Union itself. On the meanwhile, it's also engaging with, say, certain sections of the Palestinians. So it's having a very complicated game across the region.
Yes, Turkey has now again played the Palestinian card, particularly after the United Arab Emirates have emerged clearly as renegades to the Palestinian cause. It's also true, the Arab people, by and large, sense this as a betrayal. They do see United Arab Emirates having betrayed the Arab cause. And there is therefore going to be an upswell of opinion against countries which try to normalize relationship with Israel. And we see Saudi Arabia has not followed suit. They decided this is not the time to do it. Let the United Arab Emirates take the brunt of the criticism. We will operate as we have done, play ball, but not make it open. So that's the role that they're playing. And as we know, United Arab Emirates has been in bed with Israel for quite some time. So that we have discussed earlier as well. So given that, it's interesting to see what Turkey will do, because Turkey, as far as Palestine was concerned, blew hot, blew cold. It did various things, and it never went out on a limb on the question of Palestine. There is of course, the Navi Marmara case, where it did give certain amount of support to what those boats tried to do. But nevertheless, they have really never gone beyond any symbolic level. They think this is an opportunity for them to occupy the high ground on West Asia, particularly representing the larger Sunni masses, because they also think politics in terms of religious politics. So, but there is a difference between religious politics as done directly by the quote-unquote mosque politics, what Saudi Arabia tries to do by trying to take control over the mosques in the region, and what, for instance, Muslim Islamic Brotherhood represents, which is more directly political Islam. Muslim Islam as an identity, and using that to conquer the politics of the country. And of course, the mosques also then fall prey to this kind of political Islam. But nevertheless, there are two different centers of power, which I think also makes it much more difficult for others to understand that Turkey, while being Islamic Brotherhood, having Islamic identity politics at the core of what they're doing, not secular politics, at the same time is very different from Saudi Arabia. And I think that difference is what people don't seem to see. And having now playing the Palestinian card, what Erdogan is trying to do is to say, I'm the leader of West Asian Muslims, at least the Sunni part of it. I'm the leader of the Muslims. They're not very happy with Iran for obvious reasons. But their primary enemy in the case of United Arab Emirates, it was also the feeling that UAE supported the coup against Erdogan, the coup which was defeated, which started really from the Air Force trying to attack Erdogan. He's trying to bring his plane down and so on. That, and which was from an American-controlled airbase. That's the reason they said the Americans are a part of the conspiracy. But they have identified United Arab Emirates and specifically MBZ as a key mover of the coup for whatever reasons we won't get into. And therefore, there is a much more direct enmity between Erdogan and MBZ. Therefore, they're positioning themselves as leaders. And this is a long-term threat for the monarchy. As you have said, monarchies should have been dismantled by the 20th century. That they still last is because of enormous oil wealth that these countries have. Now that the oil prices have collapsed, they have also lost a lot of their political clout right now. Will the oil prices revive? Probably not for next 3 to 5 years. Will they ever revive to the extent that they had earlier? Maybe never, because it's true that renewables are coming much more into their own. And it's possible that oil will never be that important again. So given all of this, I think the power of these countries are going to weaken in the future, and monarchies have no place in a modern world. So I'm fairly convinced this is a long-term secular trend that we are going to see. Decline of monarchical powers in the region, political power of the monarchies, and over a period of time, they will either have to compromise with the people and become some kind of constitutional monarchy of different kinds, but they will not be the completely autocratic monarchical powers that they are today by virtue of enormous amount of oil and wealth they have accumulated, which they can buy off their people.
Thank you so much, Praveen, for talking to us. That's all we have time for today. Keep watching NewsClick.